Hi everyone, Ryan here from Fight Game Analysis, and today we're going to be talking about the upcoming fight between Jermell Charlo and Brian Castano. Before we jump into that, if you've been enjoying the content, please go ahead and click on the like button and also subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate your support. Alright, May 14th, we get the rematch we have been waiting for. 154 pounds unification bout. Jermell Charlo, Brian Castano. Look, the first fight was exciting. I think the first fight, Brian Castano brought the heat a little bit more than most people thought he was. He came into that fight as an underdog and arguably could have got the victory. Right? There was a lot of scorecards out there that had Brian Castano as the winner. Super tight fight, a lot of back and forth, a lot of debate on a few of those rounds, but there were definitely some cards where he got the win. If I remember correctly, I think I gave it to him by 1 point, or maybe I did score the draw. Or, one round would have been 115, 113, or maybe it was 114, 114. I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head. I do remember it was a very close fight, a lot of debate, right? Because when you go back and you break down the film in this first one, I think it's very clear the patterns that we see develop. I think it's very clear where we can see each man succeed and each man has his problems. Look, basically, I don't know, the first minute and a half, first 2 minutes of every round, for like the first, 7 or 8 rounds, we saw the same thing. And we saw Jermell Charlo execute ring generalship. We saw him work his jab. We saw him move around in the center of the ring. We saw him basically control things and land the shots that he wanted to land. Get some right hands off here and there. Every now and then get a left hook. Nothing all flashy. Nothing crazy. Never really landed anything really hard. Other than he caught Castano with a nasty counter left hook off of the ropes in the second round. But I'm not talking about that exchange. I'm talking about when he was controlling in the first half of these rounds. Right? That was the majority of the rounds, like 2 minutes, sometimes even more of the round. And then we saw the same pattern develop almost in every single round. At the very end of the rounds, we saw Castano start to work where he's effective. He's not effective on the outside. He's a guy who's at a height and reach disadvantage. That's not his game. He's got a jab, but he doesn't need it. What his thing is he's got to work inside. He's got to come inside and do his best work. And we saw he was getting outworked for the majority of the fight. Typically, he's a guy who needs to use more volume. He's a guy who needs to get more punches off. Charlo doesn't have more volume. Charlo isn't known for his work rate. He's got a lower work rate than average. But during the early parts of these rounds, we saw Castano not getting things done, not getting his work done, but he would come alive at the end. He would typically come in behind that right hand, right, coming over the top of the jab, leading with it sometimes, pressing forward, but he's using the right hand to close that distance. And then he's getting in and he's doing good work on the inside. And we saw Charlo do the same thing every time, man. He would back up to the ropes. He puts his back against the ropes. He squares his feet up and he goes into this defensive mode. He's behind a high guard. He's balling up. He's trying to get underneath things. He's moving around a little bit. Every now and then he's firing off a nasty counter left hook. And when it did catch Castano, it hurt, right? We saw that in the second round at its most significant. Caught him and hurt Castano in the second round, staggered him, tried to pour some more shots on him, couldn't get him out of there. Castano was able to recover, make it out of the round. But we saw that same pattern develop all the time. So sometimes during the first part of those rounds, we would see Castano pick a lot of those shots off with his gloves, block a lot of stuff. Charlo wouldn't land anything clean. And then Castano would get in there and he would land some clean shots. Right, then we saw like the 8th and the 9th round, Castano took over a little bit more, did a little bit of good work inside in the middle of the ring versus just always need to do his work against the ropes. And then we saw Charlo make his comeback towards the end of the fight, right, 10, 11, 12. We saw Charlo come on, particularly in that 10th round. We saw him hurt Castano again, saw him get some real good work done. Now you think about that and you say, okay, if the fight happens at distance, if the fight happens in the middle of the ring, clear advantage for Charlo. We have every reason to believe that he's going to win in the rematch if that's where it were to take place. If the fight happens against the ropes, Charlo backs up. Castano wants to move forward and apply pressure. He's able to get inside of that jab, able to get on the inside where he wants to do work. Clear advantage for Castano. Have to think that he would win the vast majority of the rounds if the fight's taking place on the inside. The fight's taking place up against the ropes. But then you also got to think, the very end of the fight, last things that happen before we step into this one. If this is round 13 instead of round 1 of the second fight, what if this is round 13? Well, we have to think that the momentum is on Charlo's side. Maybe he won in rounds 10, 11, and 12 because he figured something out a little bit. Right? Because I'll be perfectly honest with you. I think he's the guy who's got more room for improvement in this equation. I have no reason to believe that if the fight takes place in the middle of the ring, Castano's going to win. But I think there's a few little things that Charlo can do that when he's on the ropes to not get dominated quite as bad. And I also think that there's a lot of things that Charlo can do to just not find himself on the ropes in the first place. Look, if he steps up his work rate just a little bit, works that jab just a little bit better, works behind that right hand just a little bit better, I think he can keep Castano at bay a little bit more. Part of his problem is that he doesn't have a high work rate. Castano does. That helps him get inside. That helps him break down what Charlo's doing. Charlo doesn't have, he's got explosive feet when he wants to use them, but he doesn't utilize a whole bunch of movement. So he's there to be found. He's not exactly hard to corner. Castano's good at cutting the ring off, good at getting the angles that he wants to get, and then having really good timing and working behind that right hand. That's how he's able to get Charlo to back up. But I think that there's things that Charlo can do to make that just a little bit more difficult, right? Tip the scale in his favor just a little bit more. He's also got that power advantage, man. So if he's able to up his work rate just a little bit, if he's able to not get caught against those ropes just a little bit more, I think it can become a clear victory for him, right? I think he could come out there and win 7 or 8 rounds. I think if he starts to put those early rounds in the bank and Castano wants to take some chances to try to get the victory, I think Charlo's there with some good timing, particularly in that left hook, and he's got some power, man. He could hurt him and get him out of there late if Castano starts to take chances, because Castano's defensively responsible, right? I'm not saying that, Charlo's going to be able to go out there and break him down by any means, but I do think if he ups that jab just a little bit, I do think if he uses that right hand at distance a little bit more, and he's a little bit smarter with his movement, that he could really give Castano some trouble. And ultimately, that's why I'm going to give him the edge in this one. That's why I'm going to have to go with Charlo in this fight. I think it is, again, going to be a tough fight. At the end of the day, if Castano were to come out with the victory, wouldn't surprise me for a minute. Highly talented fighter. But I just think based off of the way that we saw the first one, how we saw that end, the way that we could each see each man go, I really like Charlo's trainer. Derek James, man, he knows what he's doing. He knows how to implement a game plan. We've seen him go out there and be successful with fighters. We've seen him give good advice in between rounds. Good, solid advice in between rounds. And believe it or not, that's not something you see from every coach. You will see dudes out there at the world-class level training world-class fighters who will give bum advice in between rounds. And it's like, I don't know, they can't figure it out. They don't know what exactly what they're seeing. Maybe they need to sit and break down film. Maybe they're just overrated and they just happen to get their hands on a really talented guy who's going to make it all the way to the top no matter who is training them. I'm not really sure. All I know is it's one of the things that you can definitely tell in the difference between somebody who's absolutely world-class and somebody who's not. You watch what's happening in between those rounds. Some guys right there and they're just cheerleaders. Just patting them on the back, trying to get them to go. And sometimes you need to do that, but sometimes the guys need good, sound, technical advice. Derek James gives good, sound, technical advice, man. He is not going to lie to his fighter. Even at the end of that last one, when he told Charlo, you were losing this fight, you got to step it up. You got to make it happen. Like, dude, he was keeping it real with him at all times, sending him in there with all the information to make the best choices. So I think Charlo will be well prepared for this one. I think he's going to make some small tweaks. I think he's going to be able to figure out a way to get it done. Going to take him for the victory in this one. So let me know what you guys think. You see it the same way as me? How'd you see that first one? How did you really see that one going? What did you think those scorecards should have said? And do you think it's going to be the same thing in this one? Is it going to be a really tight fight? Is somebody going to make an adjustment and be able to come out with the victory? Let me know what you guys think.